8002. We'll take those calls in a moment. We first want to let you know about an effort by the Trump administration when it comes to environmental efforts, specifically when it comes to the Clean Power Plan, as it's known. Joining us on the phone, Emily Holden with E&E News, who reports on topics of this nature. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Could you remind our viewers about the Clean Power Plan, what it did and what its scope is?
Sure. So it would have began in 2022 and ended in 2030, and it essentially assigned specific goals to each state to shift away from coal-fired power plants toward lower carbon-intensive fuels like natural gas and renewable power. And overall, it would have been a 32% reduction in carbon levels by 2030.
Then, with that in mind, what's the Trump administration's plan for it?
Well, they're pretty ready to get rid of it. So the president is planning to go today to EPA headquarters to sign what he's calling it the Energy Independence Executive Order. And a big feature of that is beginning the steps to rescind the Clean Power Plan, which that's just the first step. There will have to be a rulemaking, and EPA will have to go through all of the formal steps and will face lawsuits. But this is the first, really the first step. And
so effectively, then what happens?
Well, then it's going to take a long time. We're going to see a long legal process and a lot of fighting over this. But in the meantime, states will not be working toward these goals. They already were not under an order from the Supreme Court, which had put this rule on hold while the courts are considering whether it's legal.
So you talked about various lawsuits. I imagine these are from an environmental group. And what is their role in this process?
Well, they'll be really on the front lines of the legal process along with some of the states that are supporting the Clean Power Plan. So the Trump administration essentially will no longer be defending this rule in court as the Obama administration would have. And so a lot of those groups will be assisting and sort of taking the reins of that.
And so with this executive action, a big feature of that, when it comes to environmental efforts, especially when it comes to the topic of climate change, what other aspects will the Trump administration address?
Right, and so all of this is, a lot of it is just a first step. So one other thing that he wants to do is start a review for rules about methane emissions from new sources of oil and gas production and those on federal land. Also a rule on fracking on federal land. He wants to eliminate a requirement that agencies consider climate change when they're approving different projects and making other decisions. Get rid of something called the social cost of carbon, which is kind of what policymakers use to figure out what the public health and other impacts are of these emissions. And he really wants to try to promote fossil fuel production, so telling agencies look for ways that they're facing obstacles and try to lift them, and also lift a current moratorium on coal leasing on federal lands.
And so what's been the reaction, especially from states that have coal as a featured resource of theirs and other energy-producing states?
I think they're pretty happy about this, especially not needing to comply with the Clean Power Plan. Although, states that have been working to decarbonize for a lot longer are saying we're still going to be doing that work. Utilities are still shifting away from coal-fired power plants, and they will continue to do so. It's really important to keep in mind that as much as you hear today that this is going to bring back the coal mining industry, that's not necessarily true. That would be very difficult to do just up against the market realities that coal is facing.
So this is Emily Holden from E&E News joining us to talk about this Clean Power Act executive order. What time does that take place today?
2 p.m.
Emily Holden with this organization, E&E News. Thanks for telling us about this. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.